It's a slow week in Washington, but the campaign trail is still happening. As it mixed up in former Vice President Joe Biden's camp, his lead Latina advisor went bye-bye. The Supreme Court takes up a big gun case. Is there a swing vote out there? I mean, anywhere? And President Trump signs an anti-cruelty animal law. But check the fine print. I'm Jamal Simmons. Here's why you should care. The top Latina advisor on former vice president and 2020 presidential candidate Joe Biden's campaign resigned last week. National Coalition's director Vanessa Cárdenas cited discontent over Biden's positions on immigration as the reason. Here to talk more about this is reporter from the Hill Latino, Rafael Bernal. Rafael, what is going on in the Biden campaign and the Latino outreach department?
Well, I mean, they are having a little bit of trouble. They're taking too long to go after Latinos. One of the reasons, apparently, that Cárdenas resigned, and we only know this sort of through hearsay because the sources were friends of hers in the immigration circle. She hasn't come out and said anything.
Well, her Twitter account says it. Her Twitter account says former Joe Biden.
Oh yeah, she's out. That we do know. The why is kind of a little bit of the mystery.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons apparently is because there's so much focus on Iowa, New Hampshire, and in the case of the Biden campaign, they at least have South Carolina, because some other Democratic campaigns don't even have that.
Sure. But now, why aren't they focused on Nevada? Because people don't talk about this, but in between, there's Iowa, New Hampshire, and then people skip ahead to South Carolina, but the Nevada caucuses are a pretty big deal. They were put there for a reason, a lot of it because there were working class and Latino voters in the state of Nevada that the Democrats ought to be paying attention to.
That is exactly right. Nevada has a population of about maybe 3 million people, about 2.5 million in Clark County, where Las Vegas is, 30% Hispanic. Clark County. The rest of the state is very white in general, but where the votes are is very Hispanic. The Sanders campaign knows this. The Sanders campaign knows that the union people, because unions are very strong in Las Vegas.
Absolutely.
The hotel workers and the culinary workers union.
Culinary workers are huge, and in fact, it's such a big deal that when you campaign in Nevada, they have caucuses in the casinos so that workers who work in hotels and casinos can go and caucus while they're on break and then go back to work.
And so you're absolutely right to bring up Nevada, because that's number 4. That's right after South Carolina. So you have Iowa, New Hampshire, they've got Buttigieg, they got Biden. South Carolina, Biden is in a very strong position. And then Nevada is actually the opening to Super Tuesday. In Super Tuesday, you have, among a lot of other very important states, but you have California and Texas.
Well, and let's remember this. The California early ballots go out on the day of the Iowa caucus. So February 3rd, when the ballots get mailed out. So there are a lot of people who are going to be voting right in the shadow of Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada before you ever even actually have the California date come. So it just seems to me that if you're a campaign that cares about winning California, and then also these states that are coming up like Arizona, Florida, New Mexico, Colorado, there are all these states in the general election and the primaries that matter. It seems like Latino voters would be high on the priority list.
They should be. They should be, especially for Democrats. And then there's another thing that Hispanics are flagging, that for the general election, you need to encourage Latino voters to come out. You need Latino voters in Arizona and Texas, and even in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, like all these key states.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Texas. Texas is huge.
Huge.
Yeah. And it's the same day as California in the primary.
They can either make Republicans spend a lot of money in Texas or let Republicans spend a lot of money in Michigan and Wisconsin and Nevada and Arizona, where it hurts Democrats. So,
all right, so Laura, so Vanessa Cárdenas is a big person around here. This is not her first campaign. Emily's List, World Wildlife Fund, Center for American Progress. She's been around for a long time. Seems like she's kind of got a big name and plays a big role in U.S. Democratic politics. Did the Biden campaign just not pay attention to her advice? Is that what happened?
Well, that remains to be seen. She is being very discreet. I know that which to me indicates that there hasn't been a fight. She just wants to go in a different direction. The Biden campaign still has big names like Cristobal Alex, who's a huge name in Latino politics.
Laura Jimenez is still there.
Laura Jimenez is still there. Like they have big names, and they were among the first to go after these first names and sort of have this recognition that you need Hispanics, not just sort of doing Latino outreach. That's good. You need that. But you need them at the top strategy levels of the campaign. It's just that right now the focus on the very early part of the primaries is hurting them with Latinos and with African Americans to an extent.
Okay, so we can't get out of this segment without talking about one of the big elephants, which is the Biden appearance last week or a week or so ago, where the gentleman went after the Obama-Biden administration for being the deporters in chief, kept pressing the vice president on his record, and finally the vice president's response to him was, go vote for Donald Trump.
Right, and the guy said, no, I'm not going to do that. Like immediately was like, no, that's not the point. The point is start talking.
Is that how you woo people, to tell them to go vote for your opponent because you ask me questions?
I'm pretty sure that if that man votes in the South Carolina primary, he is not going to vote for Joe Biden.
And the question is, if he was asking him about ethanol in Iowa, or if he was asking him about, the coal mining in West Virginia, would the vice president have had the same response?
He probably wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been as frustrating because he is tied to the Obama administration for good and ill. And on immigration, it is a very mixed record. And it's a mixed record of really not having empathy for people who are sort of on the receiving end of American immigration enforcement. And Obama did, ratchet up American immigration enforcement, trying to prove a point. But he's trying to prove a political point while a lot of people are suffering in their daily lives. So that's not the way for a candidate to really approach an audience that his own party has caused pain upon.
The Democrats have done a lot on this question over the years. Democrats are clearly, for people who care about immigration, make it a higher priority to be inclusive than the Republicans do. But it does feel like immigration, particularly, Latinos care about a lot of issues, not just immigration, but it does feel like immigration in Latino issues just aren't on the forefront of the Democratic burner in this particular primary.
They're not, and they never have been. When they have been, it's been rhetoric more similar to the president's in the early 90s when Biden was engaging in it. So he also has to sort of, own up to that. Probably not pay for it, but own up to it. So, and let's remember, immigration is not number one for Latinos. It's like number 5, but it is sort of an entry level. Since it affects Hispanics at a disproportionate degree, if you don't want more immigration, if you don't like the current crop of immigrants in the country, you're saying something that's not great.
I think of it like affirmative action was for African Americans. That's not the first thing people bring up. But if you're bad on getting people jobs and giving them priority to get employed, it's kind of hard to have a conversation about anything else. I think abortion and choice kind of becomes the same question for a lot of women voters. If you're bad on those questions, it's kind of hard to have the next level of conversation for people who are taking that as an issue. So it's very tough for Democrats if they don't figure this out. I think about someone that we know, Stephanie Valencia, who's been doing a lot of work on this, Equis Labs, and they're saying that Latino voters in particular are not necessarily dedicated to voting for the Democratic nominee next time. They have to be wooed. And we haven't yet seen Democrats woo them as much as maybe they should.
And they have to be energized, because if you want results like 2018 in Texas, where there are certain counties where 300% increase of Latino voters over 2014, it's because they were excited to go out and vote for someone. If they just think if nobody's passing the litmus test, if we actually want you here, it's kind of hard to get them to register and vote and, surpass all these voter exclusion techniques that are in places like Texas.
The Supreme Court generally doesn't like to get involved in Second Amendment cases, but on December 2nd, the Supreme Court will hear arguments in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus the city. What's odd is the case was already settled in a lower court. Basically, gun owners in New York City have two kinds of licenses they can get. One is to carry a handgun for target practice, hunting, or self-defense. The other allows gun owners to store their guns in their dwelling. In this instant, gun owners could only take the gun outside of the home if they were going to the 7 designated shooting ranges. Well, the city got sued, and long story short, the lower court sided with the plaintiffs, New York State Rifle. In July, the court ruled to expand the law for people with premises licenses, allowing them to transport their guns outside of New York City. One would think the case is closed, right? Wrong. The lawyers representing the plaintiffs wanted to take the win even further. They're arguing to expand the scope of Second Amendment rights even further, like stripping restrictions on semi-automatic assault weapons, for example. Why you should care? Rewind back to 2008 to the last gun case to come before the Supreme Court. Justices struck down a 1975 law in the District of Columbia that banned people from owning or being in possession of handguns. At the time, Justice Anthony Kennedy sided with his fellow conservatives, but he added language that prohibited felons and mentally ill people from obtaining firearms. Seems to make sense. They can't obtain firearms, or it banned firearms from places like schools and government buildings. But with Kennedy retired, his replacement, Justice Kavanaugh, is an open advocate for less stringent Second Amendment restrictions. So we might see this case give pro-gun advocates even bigger gains. So there's a rumor going around Hill TV. It's a scurrilous, demeaning rumor that I don't like dogs. That's categorically untrue. I do like dogs. I just don't like owning dogs. But for all of you who love dogs, it seems like all the cute and cuddly friends out there scored a win this week. President Trump signed the Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture Act, or PACT is what they call it, just yesterday. This bipartisan bill builds on a 2010 federal law that banned the creation and distribution of, quote, animal crushing videos. Basically, videos showing animals being tortured and killed. But fast forward almost 10 years, it seems that finally federal lawmakers are trying to do more. This new law is more expansive and prohibits animals from being, quote, purposefully crushed, burned, drowned, suffocated, impaled, or otherwise subject to serious bodily injury. Yuck. Under this new law, anyone charged with animal cruelty would face up to 7 years in prison, plus face fines. And this is a significant improvement for some animals. But as with many laws, there are loopholes that leave many animals vulnerable. The bill doesn't protect animals from hunting, medical research, and euthanizing. And animals for livestock are also not protected. Even your pets are considered livestock until they're in your home. That's the loophole. Many of us have probably seen these ASPCA commercials when the animals are kept in cages, appear malnourished and suffering, make you want to cry. They're technically livestock, and the law wouldn't protect them from being kept in inhumane conditions. So why should you care? Lawmakers and animal rights activists are cheering the move, and it heads in the right direction, but the contradictions in this law are confusing and even eyebrow-raising. So while PACT leads us to believe the interests of the furry ones and all pets are being looked after, look a little closer. There's still loopholes. Thanks for watching Hill TV on YouTube. Be sure to click subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we post new videos, and head to thehill.com for all the latest political news.